Salute, Discipoli, Discipoli, as promised. Here is your short little tutorial video, a little extra review on these new ablative uses. This is our first new grammar of Latin 2, so we're jumping in with both feet here. Now, again, we know that the ablative case, whether it's first, second, or third declension nouns and adjectives, are used primarily, for the most part, with prepositions. But as we're learning now in Unit 4, there are 6 grammatical uses for the ablative case. In all cases, you find words are nouns generally are being used based on the structure of the sentence, based on what the sentence is attempting to do. So if we take a look here, I have 6 examples, one for each. And the first one here, puella id cum superbia dixit. So superbia, arrogance, is in the ablative case. Now I can see here the preposition cum always takes the ablative anyway. So what's going on here? The girl said it, all right, whatever it is, cum superbia, with arrogance. So this would be what's considered ablative of manner. It's how she's saying something, or how you're doing something, the manner in which you are doing something. We call that ablative of manner. And you're going to have the cum preposition if it's along with just a noun. If you were to add an adjective, this is just a quirky little rule, but if you were to add an adjective, say with great arrogance, then I would lose the cum and just have magna superbia, both with long A's, both in the ablative, and I would just have to add the with on my own and not forget that it's in there. So translation would be, the girl said it with arrogance. And again, I have to be on the lookout for when this is used with an adjective, because the cum won't be in there to remind me to translate it with, okay? With. Number 2, canis sub arbore est. Now this one is easy, and this one's nice because we've been seeing ablative usage like this all year long since we first learned prepositions, which is what sub is. It means under, and so this would be ablative of place where, ablative of place where, because it's describing the location of something, ablative of place where, okay? And I would translate this as canis, the dog, okay? Est is sub arbore, under the tree, okay? And there you can see how arbore is in the ablative case. All right. Now the next one, milites gladiis carent. This is the one of the 6 uses of the ablative that's probably the trickiest, and it's because there are just certain verbs that for whatever reason take the ablative as their direct object. Almost always direct objects are in the accusative case, but here sometimes in the dative, and here sometimes they're in the ablative. It's when you're lacking in something, when you're separated from something, when you're removed from something. There's this spatial difference going on here, okay? So here we have the soldiers, carent, are lacking in swords, I could say, or I could just say they're lacking swords. In English, we often say this 2 different ways. We can say in, or we don't need in. So this would be ablative of separation, and again, it's only used with about 6 or 7 different verbs, and we'll see these over the course of Latin too, most of them anyway, and the most common is careo carere, to be lacking in. So we would say then that the soldiers are lacking, and I can say with or without in, lacking in swords, gladiis, okay, in the plural ablative. Now, here, next one, fabula a magistro legitur. Now here again, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because we haven't learned the passive voice yet. Well, everything we say is in the active voice. We'll later learn the passive voice, which is when you say something. Active would be I shut the door. Passive is the door is shut by me. Well, that by me, or by him, or by the general, or by the president, that's called ablative of personal agent, the person who's doing the work, doing the action in a passive sentence. Here we have fabula a magistro legitur. That tur on the end is a passive ending that you haven't learned yet. It's like legit, only legitur. This makes it the story is read by, and you always need a or ob, that's your preposition here, and it always takes the ablative. The story is read by the teacher. So we have an ablative of personal agent. I cannot type, which you guys can see clearly whenever I do these videos. Ablative of personal agent, and we would translate it as the story is read, legitor. We translate as by, right? By the teacher, and teacher is in the ablative case, and that's why. Okay, two more to go. Pater illo tempore advenit. So here we have the father came or arrived, advenit, illo tempore. Illo is in the ablative, tempore is in the ablative, but I don't have a preposition. You would think I'd have a preposition, but I don't. This is called ablative of time when, and there's tempore, time. So, but you won't always get an obvious indicator. It could be on that day, or at that moment, or in that situation. Ablative of time when, you have to supply in. It's not given to you as a preposition usually in Latin. You just have to supply it in English. So I'm going to call this ablative of time when, and I'm going to translate it as the father came at that time. Illo demonstrative pronoun, at that time, and that's why, again, both are in the ablative case. Okay, and I have to supply. I put it. I put at, but I could just as easily put in that time or at that time. Okay, so last but not least, discipulae stilis scribent. This is probably the most common ablative use that you'll find, and it's called ablative of means. It's how it's not. Don't confuse it with manner. Ablative manner is how you're doing something. Ablative of means is what you're doing with, what you're doing it with, what object or what or sometimes what mood or what behavior or something like that you're doing something with. So here we have discipulae, the students, the female students. They will write scribera. They will so this is third conjugation future. They will write stilis with pencils. Now you don't get cum here. You would think you get cum, the preposition with, but you don't. Not with ablative of means. It's just whatever is being used, whatever object or tool or weapon or whatever the case might be, without a preposition. You have to add the with when you translate into English. So this is ablative of means, the means by which or with which you're doing something, and in this case, you're doing it with pencils. So the students will write, scribera, will write with pencils. And as you can see again, I have to supply the with in English because I don't get the preposition cum here in Latin, and you're not going to. You're never going to with ablative of means. You just have to recognize that an object or something like that is in the ablative, and it's how the work or the action is being performed, or in what way it's being performed with what object. Okay, so there you go. The 6 ablative uses in Latin grammar in all their glory. Hope you enjoy this, and I will see you in next class. Walete.